So what we're going to do is spend the next 15 minutes talking to you, as Lara just mentioned, as you've been hearing about today. Really, I suppose, the first coordinated project that Conversant and Epsilon have worked on, which has been going about a year now. So we're going to tell you what it's about and show you some results. So the process we're going to go through, we're going to tell you what it is to start with, so that everybody's clear what we're doing. We're going to talk about how it's used. We're going to look at why we're doing it. We're going to look at the technical application of it, and that's where Theo comes in, and then share some results with you. So we'll go ahead. So what is it, firstly? I mean, that's the most important thing. Well, if you take nothing away from this next 15 minutes, the key element of this is that it's collecting your browser data. It's putting tags on your website, collecting browser data. The second thing it's doing, it's really, and the key to this, it's combining your offline data with the online data. Something that we've been challenged with, and all of you in the room, and as we've been talking about, are challenged with day in, day out. How do you marry up that journey on the offline and the online and the offline customer activity? And that's what we're doing here. So can I just move across? And also, this is going to be available monthly to you. This is already happening, and we'll talk about what's happening currently in the last year, but this is happening, and this is something we're doing already. It can be used in two ways. The first thing, or the first way in which we can use it is we can incorporate the browser data that we collect using Conversant technology into the customer segmentation solutions that some of you in the room I know are using Epsilon Abacus for. Or secondly, the way you can use it is by using the browser data that we capture and the variables that we create off there in your own segmentations. And again, some of you in the room and other members are actually doing that because they have the analytical function to be able to manage that. Okay, so how is it applied? What's the point of doing this? What's the point of marrying up the browser data on your website with the offline Abacus data, the transactional data that you all use in some capacity with us? Well, the challenge we've all got, and everybody in the room has got, is firstly, how are you getting those lapsed customers back engaged with you? We all spend a lot of money, all of you spend a lot of money getting those people and getting those customers to buy from you initially, and then you spend even more money trying to get them to buy again, which is a huge frustration. So part of using the browser data is being able to understand if somebody hasn't bought from you for a year, but we know that they've browsed your site in the last 2 months, that's a key component of recency to be able to add into the segmentation that, again, either Epsilon Abacus are doing or you're doing yourself, to actually give you that key indicator whether it's worth messaging that individual. It's very powerful stuff, and there's results a bit later that I can share with you in terms of how that's being used now. Also, importantly, it's that engagement we've heard today. It's all about the messaging and the constant messaging and trying to get that right, whether it's in an offline capacity, whether it's an online capacity, whether it's in the retail stores. So it's about understanding how often is that person coming back to the site, and how is that interacting with what I'm doing elsewhere with them. Also, it's crucially the ability to upsell that individual. Again, if you know that somebody of your active customers is coming onto your website, and we know that they've done that in the last month, or the last 3 weeks, then you can actually use the information and the browser data that we're capturing, putting into the offline database to make some decisions. It's about making that segmentation work harder for you, which we're all trying to do, whether it's through Abacus or whether you're doing that individually. And crucially, the other important element of this is gaining that understanding of how the offline mailings that we're all doing, whether that's your on the customer side, how is that interacting with the browsing activity of your customer? The frustration is knowing if that individual isn't logging into your website, what are they doing? Are they coming on? How can I interact with them? This is a really important aspect of being able to do that and really making that strategy and that customer mailing even more important. Okay, so the applications there, and Theo's going to go into how it all works, but why are we doing it? What's the point in this? Did we just wake up one day and decide, we're going to create this product for no reason whatsoever? Well, actually, no, funnily enough. It was quite importantly, many of you in the room and others have been asking us to do this probably for the last 4 or 5 years. How can Abacus help marry the great work we do with you offline and marry it to the online activity of those customers? That was a huge challenge, but what we're doing now and the point of this product, it's completing that picture. We're able to do it. We're able to combine that browser activity with your offline activity and marry that up and make it a simpler process for you to understand how you contact those customers. Importantly, before we launched this, we did a lot of testing. There was no point in launching a product and working in conjunction together unless we knew it was going to, on paper, work. So we did a lot of testing up front to make sure that the uplift in terms of response, in terms of return on investment, actually paid off. So we know that works, and again, I can show you some results a bit later on. Thirdly, and probably most importantly, was to have the technology to be able to do it. Doing this, it sounds relatively straightforward, but being able to link an individual and make sure that you're targeting the right person, both online and offline, is quite a feat. And the technology that Conversant is able to bring to the party is absolutely key here. So there was no point in launching something unless it was viable and it was the technology used really backed up the results. And fourthly, as I mentioned earlier, it works. It's proofs in the pudding at the moment. We've got some results to share with you, but we knew up front on paper it was working, and this technology is out there. Andy was talking before with Robert about the CRM element of the Conversant technology. This is using the same technology, understanding that browser information, matching it to the offline data in an anonymous way, which Theo will talk about, to actually add that value and understand how you target your own customers in the right way. Okay, so I'm going to pass on to Theo now to tell you how it works.
Cool, thanks, Dan. Can everyone hear me? Hope so, yeah. So first of all, I work in operations, so please excuse the rudimental presentation skills that you might see. But yeah, so before we can dive into how it works, I guess we need to just understand that it's a really simple process, effectively, that we're trying to achieve. And all we're trying to do here is link offline data to data that we collect online. So the offline data comes in the form of sort of a customer file and any transaction data that you already have on the customers. And this you already do with Abacus. All of you in the room here are used to this process, sending your customer data through to Abacus. The other side of that is the online data, and that's the bit that we need to, the gap we need to fill really in order to achieve this. So the online data is basically tagging your site to see how your customers interact and browse your site. So it's things like what categories do they visit, how far in the site funnel did they go, and most importantly, we need to be able to collect transaction data because it's that transaction ID that is the vital part to get us to be able to link the offline information that we have, the knowns that you guys already know about your customers, to the unknowns, which is how they interact with your site and what they're doing there. So it's key to just point out that the transaction ID is the event or the match event at which we are able to link the two different data sets together. And that enables us to leverage the online data to help infer the models that we're running offline. So just a couple of other things there. One other very, very key call out is that all of this is done anonymously through Agility Harmony, and that is a proprietary Epsilon company as well. So all the data transfer is done anonymously. And so once we're able to do this join between the online and offline data, we're able to get a holistic view of the customer. So not only what they've purchased from you, how frequently they purchase, but also where they browse and what they browse. And the where they browse is quite a key thing as well, because with the Conversant technology, we're able to join an individual not just to one of their devices, but across all the devices that they interact with the internet with. Okay, so let's go into a little example of how this might work. So let's take this person over here. using the models that you run today with just the offline data, these are some of the indicators that Abacus would use in order for the customer segmentation and the mail selections that they do. Because we can now link the online data to the customer data that's already existing and the data that already exists in the Abacus co-op, we can now include other really, really important indicators about that customer's engagement level. So, cool, let's take all of that stuff and let's assume we've got all of that for one of your customers. Can you imagine how powerful that would be if you could apply that to your entire customer database? So what that means is for an ordinary, and that's probably the wrong way to say, for the current models that you guys are running, you might run a selection on the data and you'd pick a few people. So you'd get a subset of your customers, which you'd go and send a mailer to. We can now, layering in the online data, enhance that selection process. And not only that, further qualify the individuals that you may have already selected. So what this means is we are able to now take that group, and it's this idea of having a holistic view of your customers that fundamentally changes the way that the Abacus models will segment your customers, and ultimately it's going to help you target them a lot better. But that's not all. So as Dylan mentioned, there is a second part of this, which is we can give you the data back as well to do this yourselves. So what you'll get back is a customer file with those are the data points that you'll get back in the data feed, and it'll get sent to you monthly. It's provided at a visit level, so you'll be able to see if individuals are visiting your site, what cadence they visit your site at, and also it's supplied back free of charge. So there's no additional cost to getting the data back. So we've also been doing this for quite some time, and there's a couple of learnings that I just wanted to share with you guys. So for anyone who is interested in doing this, these are just some call-outs. It can be quite time-consuming to get an integration or a tag discussion underway. A lot of you guys would be working with an outsourced digital partner. The other thing that I want to call out is involve the web developer as early as possible to make sure that we are collecting the relevant data on site, because if the wrong data is coming in, obviously the inferences we make off the back of it won't be as useful. The other very, very important call out is the customer ID and order ID need to match in the two different data sets. So what we collect on site needs to be able to match what we see in the customer files. And obviously, because that's the most important, that's the match event. Without that, we're unable to effectively join the online browser data to the lists you'll be mailing. The other thing is, at peak times, we all know it gets really crazy, so probably not going to have a chance to do any development on the site. So as I understand it, now is quite a quiet time for most of you guys. So the time is now to get this development stuff in place. And then the last call out there is that scheduling this work in with the relevant teams is important, because it's a coordination between a digital team and an offline team as well. So yeah, we've seen some great success, and I think I'm going to hand back to Dylan now to show us the progress so far and some results. Thank you.
Thanks, Theo. So as you can see, it's a relatively simple process, but it needs input from you guys as well. To share with you the progress so far, as Theo mentioned, we've been doing this for about a year or so now. So we've had some great traction with some of you in the room and others who are not here today. And this project's really, really going ahead in quite a quick fashion. So to update you, as you can see there, there's 103 companies who've agreed to tag their website. So agreed to put the Conversant tags on there so we can pull off that browser data, feed that into the Abacus database, and essentially use that layer of browser data to improve your customer segmentation. 31 of those are currently live. As Theo just showed on that previous slide, over the year we've learned a few things that have sometimes hold up the process. That's some technical things, and also, to be honest, just time that people have to do this. But as he also mentioned, the key, it's all about development time, and certainly the feedback we've had over the last few months is that between April and June this year seems to be a time where the vast majority of businesses have some development windows to actually do this type of work. So if you're in that sort of 70 odd that have agreed to do this, but haven't had the time or the development window to do that, I strongly suggest that in the next 3 months, we'll certainly be speaking to you. We get this development done, and also any others that haven't yet signed up to this, do that, because the important thing is once we get those tags on your site, going into, as you all know, the autumn, winter and the Christmas season, that's where a lot of traffic, that's where a lot of browser information comes on, and you can capture a lot of data quite quickly that can have a quite dramatic effect on how we can segment your data, or how you can do that yourselves. So bear that in mind, and as I say, speak to your account manager, speak to me and Theo about that. And importantly, we've sent 19 data files back to clients. So we've done a certain amount of work ourselves with clients where we do their customer segmentation, and I'll show you a couple of results from that. But also importantly, a lot of clients are using this now on their own segmentations in-house, so we're sending that back and they're incorporating that into their own customer segmentation. Okay, so finally, results so far. What's been happening? It's all well good and talking about it, but does it actually make a difference? Okay, so we've got two examples here. The first one's a men's fashion retailer. And what we looked at there, this was work we did. This is a company, actually, who were one of the very early adopters. They started doing this pretty much from day one when we launched this. So this particular analysis was done on the summer mailings they did last year. And what we first looked at was their active customers. How can adding browser data onto their customer segmentation improve segmentation on your active customers, which obviously is always a challenge because your active 0 to 12 tend to be your best customers. But as you can see from this, when we overlaid 0 to 6 month browsing information prior to that summer mailing, the uplift compared to just mailing the whole lot was 180%, which is quite significant considering that this was early on in the process, and the actual pool that we were working on, the match rate's relatively low. I think Robert and Andy spoke about that on the CRM side. As it is with the offline database, more people involved, the bigger the database is, and the better the match rate. But that's quite impressive results from an early campaign. And what we're doing now is working on that, developing strategy with that client to really maximise that opportunity. And then also on their lapsed customers, again, which is always a challenge for everybody, on their 13-month plus lapsed customers, again, where we match that 0 to 6 month browser information on people who hadn't bought from them for a minimum of a year, there was a 500% uplift in response, which is pretty impressive. So again, has huge impact straight away, and no doubt those figures will stack up as we go into this year. And also some work we did with a book retailer towards the back end of last year, again looking at that 0 to 6 month browser activity on their own customers. You can see there that there was 186% uplift across 2 campaigns, and that's important. It wasn't just against one; it was against 2 campaigns. And again, that was early doors for them, but that was quite impressive. So again, we're going to develop that as we go. So that brings us to the end. Hopefully, we've got across the benefits of doing this. For those of you who've signed up to it, who like the idea, let's get going over the next 3 months. And for those of you in the room who maybe haven't yet, hopefully it's convinced you it's something worthwhile doing.